1. Alright, so we're going to continue on with LAMP servers. As I couldn't cover it all last time, we ran out of time. I'm going to go over how to set virtual hosting. That part is on your final exam, actually, so make sure you pay attention to all that. And I'm also going to go over how to set up the MySQL database and how to work with it, some with a little bit of PHP, and I'm stopping right there. And how to automate tasks as a network admin through a web page using PHP. That's pretty much what you need to know. It's just how to automate tasks like setting up database things like that. You can even execute shell scripts and stuff like that, and shell commands from the actual web page through PHP. I'll show you how to do that too. So very cool, very powerful, and let's look at how to do some of this stuff. All right. So with that said, let's go ahead and just launch Firefox here. And I'm just going to kick this out on different tabs. I'm going to use this. Now I've set this up with virtual hosting, and I'll show you in just a second here. I can actually have multiple websites on the same server, on the Apache server. And that's what virtual hosting is about. I think you can have 62, if I remember the number exactly, up to 62 different virtual hosts on one single computer. One single server, and in doing so, you can bring in a lot more money. So say you have a LAMP server, right, and you're picking up that $10 a month per head type thing. You can have 62 of those, So and then you multiply 62 times 10, you have $620 per month coming in for one server. Yeah, it adds up, right? So it's not so bad, right? So it makes sense to do virtual hosting, right? It's a lot cheaper than doing it one server per person. Of course, you can charge a lot more money for one server for a single person, but you make the most money by having lots of people on a single server. Granted, the security is not as high as having your own server devoted to you as it is, but it's still pretty daggone high with Linux in particular. So you do have all those permissions and all that stuff. So there's not much chance. So we're going to go over how to set that up right here at the very beginning on the virtual hosting. So I'll show you how to do that. Also realize it can be coded in. I'm going to show you how this works here in just a bit, which is pretty cool. So one of the things that I can do here is I can actually access, and you can see this right here. We have Nestler server here /db_query.php. This is running on one host address, and then we also have localhost /execute_shell_commands.php. So this is essentially two different websites being hosted on the same Apache server using virtual hosting, and I'm going to show you how to set this up. I didn't get a chance to go over this last time. We just didn't have time, and I didn't have time to go over MySQL a little bit. It's in your book, but it is one of those things where you will absolutely run into this all the time in the field. And this is the kind of stuff you'll do on a day-to-day basis or a regular basis, and it's something you'll be dealing with all the time. I don't care if you're on Windows or on Linux. This is what you're going to be dealing with, period. As a network admin for doing web servers, period, you're going to deal with this, okay? So this is very important, and there's also, I pointed out, there's also Rad PHP from Imbarcitro. It's the name of the company. It used to be Borland, and they were bought by another company, and then that company got bought by Imbarcitro. Unfortunately, they don't put out books for their software, which is crazy, but their software is really cool because you can drag and drop and create an entire web page with practically no code, and including hooking it up to a database system, all this stuff. It's not good for creating like web pages that you'd have for a web page market, but it is good for network admins where you can just quickly set up a whole interface like that, a matter of minutes, literally, and have it hook up to do a whole bunch of database tasks or something like this that you're running. Now I realize you can also execute these scripts on the web, and like you could click a link or a button and then actually have that execute a shell script server side and actually create it. Like you could create a new account that when someone signs up for a new account for a hosting or something like that, you could actually have it generate the code that gets inserted into the LAMP server, and then have it automatically restart your LAMP server from the shell script, automatically entering that person's information and automatically creating that account on the fly. And you can shell script that out and execute it from a web page. I'll show you how to do that here in just a second. First, let's talk about virtual hosting. So this is what a lot of the companies do for when you sign up for a new account or whatnot. So I'm going over basically how they do it, which you won't be able to find any information on it. But this is how they do it. And this is what you'll be working with too, because that's a big deal and that makes a lot of money. All right, so I'm going to go into terminal here. And I'm just going to hit enter. Okay. And let's just blow that up some. Okay, so one of the things I want to do is I need to go into my etc folder. Well, first off, let me talk about this. I need to have a couple of things. Now, what a lot of people will do, and this makes a whole lot of sense, they'll actually put the DOM or the doc in the actual user account. Now, I didn't do that, but you could do that, and that would work fine. And the reason why you would do this is when you create the new account for that new person, then they have their own account that they can log into when they log into the system virtually, remotely with SSH or FTP. It drops them right into their own account, and then you can have that be the actual web page, their home account. So you could have like their home account and then have a HTML folder in there. And you can actually point your DOM to the HTML folder or document root, shall I say? Not DOM. DOM is the actual web page layout. I'm not going to get into that. It's kind of complicated. I'm not getting into that. So document root is basically your location of where the web page is going to be hosted for that particular account. You can actually have that point to a folder inside of that person's user account, which is what a lot of companies do for these web hosting type setups. But in this case, I did a little differently. It really doesn't matter. You could do it either way. You are probably best off having it in the person's user account. And you can put that inside of scripting. I've already showed you guys how to script out creating user accounts on the fly. So you could literally have it create the user account on the fly. You could have it create the folder for the HTML folder, and you could automatically insert that document root virtual host and then restart the server on the fly. Bam. Now you purchase it, bam, it clicks, runs that script, does it all type thing, literally. And you can insert stuff that you pass to it. You could pass input to the script. And I showed you how to pass it, how to code it out where you can receive input from the terminal. You can actually run the command at the terminal and pass commands to it from your actual web page, which thus you could take information from that user and thus generate that whole thing. So realize here we're talking about actual interactive model for actually doing business and actually making money off of this, and this is how you would actually go about it type thing. All right. Now you notice here I have one here, Nestler server. So say I didn't do it. The other way you could do it if you didn't do it as users, you could put it as different accounts directly in the folder for the actual HTTP or Apache server. In this case, it's /var/www. Of course, all the servers are in /var pretty much, and /www is the web account. So instead of being /html where the document root was previously, we're now putting it in individual ones for each virtual host. So if I look here at Nestler server, and I decided I do like the idea of having, please go away. I really hate that. I created an HTML folder, and this folder is going to contain the actual HTML pages in it. This allows, and this is important. The reason why you do want them to have their own special folder here, and then have, and then I would assign this user accounts permissions to this folder and whatnot, which I didn't do, but I could do that. And you know, chown, chgrp, and then chmod to change those permissions for however you see fit. And you do that for the whole folder for that user, and then that user is able to access all that. But the reason why you want one of these outside folders like this is really important. And the reason why is they need to be able to have files outside of their actual document root that sits one level above it. And the reason why is because say they need files that they need to sell online through an e-store, so they have a download purchase system, right? Well, those download files have to be outside of the document root. If they're not, someone can literally just download their files for free. A hacker could get in, figure out where they are located inside the document root. If they do that, then they could access all the videos and just download them all for free instead of paying for them. However, if the videos are outside the document root, they can't access them. Yeah. So I'm making the HTML folder the document root in here, but I'm allowing them to have their own folder outside of that one level above it, in this case Nestler server for that one. And then that's allowing them to go one level above that HTML folder. The whole web page itself is going to go inside the HTML, but I can have files sitting outside of it. Does that make sense to everybody? Well, inside of it, we could have video, we could have images, we could have all kinds of stuff inside the folders. They're going to create all and do all that. You're not going to do any of that. That's all them. Okay. You just need to set it up to where they have the potential for having things outside the document root, but still have access to it. That's very important for a web developer. It's not something you would know unless you've done web development. I am a web developer. I'm letting you know that matters. For my own videos or whatever I sell, I do have to put them outside of the document root. It has to be one level above it, otherwise people can just grab them. So it is important. And it's part of a whole permission security thing or whatnot. They get a special permission link or whatever, and it like temporarily gives them access, moves to the file or something like that, and they're able to download it. I'm not going to get into it, but it allows it to be done. So that matters. And then, of course, they need to be added to the host too. And in real life, you'd actually add it to the DNS. So you'd have to add their new address to the DNS server or whatnot. You would have to get registered with whatever online, the ICANN. You'd have to get registered with ICANN, all that fun stuff. And it would have to be made as a DNS entry into the database. I'm sorry, into the database, but into the DNS server. And then that DNS server, of course, point to the same server as this one here. You still have the same IP address, but you'd have the same DNS address for a whole bunch of these names, whatever, going to the same DNS address and resolving for a bunch of them. This is the way they do it. And then the DNS server is going to point to the same Apache web LAMP server. And then since you're virtual hosting it, the virtual Apache is going to actually figure out which web account is going to get loaded. It's going to access. Does that make sense? So it's kind of the breakdown of how this works. So let me cd out of this real quick. ls. I also did one for localhost here too, just to show multiples of it. So here's localhost, and there's that user account, and there's HTML for it. I could have done student for one if I wanted. I could have done, whatever. But it gives you some idea. Making sense? Okay. You could even make the user account the name of their website. A lot of companies do that. Like for instance, whatever, like GoDaddy.com could be GoDaddy for the user. It just makes sense. And then you don't have to worry about running into conflicts of usernames or anything like that. Because obviously, if it works out on ICANN where it's not already taken, guess what? Someone else on your server doesn't have that same name. Not possible. Right? Because there's no possibility for duplicates. So if there's no possibility for duplicates, you can't have two people with the same name on the same server because it's not the same in the world anywhere. So therefore it can't be the same on the server. So no worry about name conflicts. But anyhow, there's that. And that's how you set that up. And that's how you get it going. So you just go basically say mkdir and make those folders. Make sense? Okay, so you've already learned in the past how to make folders, how to make users, how to create groups, how to do all this stuff. You basically know the mechanics of just generating that, and you could write a script to do that. Alright, so let's look at the actual file, the actual Apache file. Oh, and one other thing you would need to do too is also, like I said, the DNS. In our case, we're going to have to do the host file. So if I cat etc/host, helps if you spell it right, Nate. Alright, so here's my host file here, and you notice I have Nestle server here. I could add a whole nother one here too, in addition to that. So I could add a whole series of names here, pointing to the same. So it all goes to the same address. It's still all the same IP address. So this has the same IP address on the internet, only it's going for multiple websites on the same Apache server. Does that make sense? Okay. So, but for our purposes, since we're not on the web, so to speak, we can't really have we can't have our DNS server point to ourselves, and we can have, just like we did localhost, we could resolve to like Nestle server here or something like that, or to your own, and have it point to the same machine but with a different name. You could do that, and that would work. And then that would resolve and would work. So if you wanted to, you could set up that DNS entry to do that. We've automated a DNS server, if I remember right. So you could possibly automate that process of inserting that DNS entry. Start to get the idea. Huh? Yeah, the resolve is the localized folder, but you would actually have to update the DNS records, create a new DNS record for that new domain. But it points to the same IP address. So you could do a CNAME or something like that if you wanted, as a nickname basically for the same address. Even though it's not really, but it is. It's all pointing to the same server, so whatever. You could do separate entries, that works too. Whatever you want to do. Probably separate entries would be best, but it works. All right. So besides that, cd into etc like so, and then I would also have to cd into httpd because that's the one for Apache. HTTP is the web server, and D means daemon, so web server, quite literally. And then we're going to go into the conf folder. This conf folder holds the configuration files. In this case, here's our httpd.conf. Now, we looked at this before, but we're going to look at some more here. httpd.conf. All right, and so here's our file. And there's a couple things of interest here. Some of this not so much, but we do need to set up virtual hosts. And virtual hosts are awesome because it's money. It does mean you can hold a lot more customers on a single server, so therefore you're talking about making more money. Here's server root. You don't really have to worry about that. It should already be there. All this stuff here should already be there. Of course, we set this stuff up before, but a lot of the defaults are just there. You don't have to even touch them. Excuse me. Let's see here. Start servers. More of these. This is performance stuff. Max clients, min spare threads, max spare threads, threads per child, etc. You can tweak those. Here's listen. Says what port we're going to listen on. We're going to listen for everything, but we're going to listen on port 80. So all IP addresses, but listen on port 80. Port 80 is the standard default. If you want to ever change what port it listens to, you change it here. Okay. You can limit to certain IP addresses. Guess you could always set up your own special custom one where it only ties into your actual IP address for your computer at home for doing network administration for the whole system and have a special virtual host just for that. You could do something like that if you wanted to. Here's the different modules that you can load for software. Also, I recommend using, if you're going to do a lot of database programming stuff, and you're going to take input in from forms, it's actually quite difficult to code a bunch of that stuff, and it's so difficult that what a lot of people have done is they've made these frameworks, which is like pre-made software, and you just call these different functions, and it does all the security and all that stuff underneath the hood, and lets you easily create forms and stuff like that for submission, and then you can use that for setting up database and routines or things like that. And they're already set up to go to the database and handle it too. So like Zim Framework's a good one. Cake PHP is another good example. Code Igniter is another one that's real popular. Besides that, there's several more out there. Symfony is another one that's good. So server admin, this would be whoever's in charge of the server. This would be their email address. In this case, it's root at localhost, which would be this server for the root administrator. So that makes sense. But you could point it to somewhere else, especially if you have a web framework for your. Now, the server name one matters actually, because this needs to point to whatever server name. In our case, it's going to be loopback, localhost, right here. So 127.0.0.1:80. Now, this could be something different. This could be an actual web address. With ICANN. Like, for example, they give an example of www.example.com for an example. I'm pretty sure www.example.com is registered, but anyways. So you're not going to be able to use it. It's just an example, okay? But in our case, since we're doing this on our own system and we're doing this locally and we're not actually registered with ICANN, we're going to do 127.0.0.1, and then that's loopback, and so that points to ourselves. And :80 course for port 80. So you need to set the server name because it's not already set. So this is something you'll need to do. So do this here. You'll need to do this. Once you set virtual hosting, you will be tested on it later on. So make sure you go through and do this. This is an assignment. You are required to do this. Document root. Here's our standard document root, but we're setting up virtual hosting now. So it's not going to matter so much. We're going to handle our own. And I could keep talking about this, but I'm not going to. So there's a directory. Don't worry about that. We're setting virtual hosting, so it's going to kind of override it more or less. I'll deny. Well, if I make it to localhost, which I do, so I override it. Which is kind of cool. All right. Here's a different directory index. What we accept right now is index.html, index.html.var, whatever. Here's your access file for security. It's a .ht access file. That was important. Don't worry, we're working our way down. Takes a little while. The one option is way up there at the top of the file, and then the rest of that virtual hosting is at the bottom of the file. Okay. Here's your standard log files, so they have their own location. So don't worry about having the log files go in the same directory with the rest of your document roots. Okay, document roots can sit for virtual hosting separately from there. You have your errors get logged to different folders if you like. You could have the error logs put into the same folder with the user so they can actually see their errors that are happening. Maybe you don't want them to. Maybe for security purposes you don't want that. So then you can have it separated from all of them and they can't see the errors that are occurring. Of course, they see the 404 error that they get in their browser if they screw up. But then you set your log level to error, warn, or whatever, critical, etc. Right now it's set to warn. Log format, don't touch it. It works, don't touch it. Custom access log, yep, these are standard. Here's your custom access log. It's going to be combined. Don't touch that. Leave it alone. Server signature on, blah, blah, blah. Don't touch it. Here's some more stuff you're not going to touch. CGI bin, support server-side scripts. Again, you're not going to touch it. Leave it alone. You could put CGI bin in the actual virtual hosting. Here's some of the files and stuff and different icons and stuff that it supports. gzip, read header. Yes, you do want to support gzip. Just allows them to download web pages much faster if you do. Quite a bit faster, like 3 times faster type thing. So it makes a big difference. It makes a really big difference. Sometimes it's more than 3 times. Depends on the file. Different languages, of course. Character set, UTF. Yeah, this is standard right here. Don't change this, please. UTF-8, don't touch that. That is standard. You'll see that a lot in web pages, especially XML files and things of that nature. Alright, keep going here. HTML is for secure HTML. Here's your different errors pages, handling the errors. Leave that alone, please. Leave all that alone. We're getting there. Yeah, you'll even notice it has Real Player in here, along with Microsoft, Mozilla, Real Player, Java, and JDK is also a type of Java. Location server, different locations. Okay, and then we're going on down. And now we're getting to our virtual host finally. Everybody's like, yes, finally. All right, here's our name virtual host. Star means all possible addresses. :80 is going to be our port. Right? You must have this set. It is not set by default. You need to set this. So it's going to be name virtual host here. Star :80. All right. We're going to use name-based virtual hosting. There's 2 types. We can either do it name-based or we can do address-based, based on the IP address. We're going to do name-based. Almost always you'll probably choose name-based, but you can do it by address if you wanted to, IP address. I realize that is a possibility. We're not going to do that. We're just going to do name-based. Can't imagine doing it by IP address, but you can do it. And here's 2 entries I've done. Now you could add more. You could add 60 more. Each one of these between the virtual host tags would be another domain. Would be a whole nother website that you're hosting on there, okay? So for instance, this is an entire entry right here. Whereas this one right here is an entire entry. Let me highlight it to help make things more clear. That is one virtual host. So once you set up with the virtual hosting with the by name, whatever was doing up above here, and then you set up the other part that I went over earlier, which was the oh gosh, I can't remember now that I just went over it. Name virtual host here. You have this one, plus you have to have the 127.0.0.1 :80 up above. That was the server. Oh gosh, was it server name? I think it was server name tag. Once you have that, you have to have that too. But once you have that, then you come in here and you can add for each one who the server admin is for their web address. All right. Then you do your document root. This is where their web page is going to be hosted out of. Make sense? So in the case of this one, it's /var/www/Nestler server/html. And then that's the location for that web page and that document root for that virtual host. Server name is going to be Nestler server. Now this is important. You might be going, okay, I don't get the big deal about that. Well, it actually makes more sense up here. In this case, it's dummy-host.example.com, or it could be www.example.com. Does that make sense? So this is where you would literally put their web address for their server. Server name is the web address, online web address from ICANN, okay? Just pointing this out. All right, error log, where's it located? Well, it's going to go into the logs folder, as we expected, but I'm going to prefix it with the name of the server, so that way I can tell its log files separate from the other log files, right? Makes sense. So I got Nestler server-error_log. And then I have for the other one, for custom log /Nestler server-access_log space common. And again, we're prefixing it with a name so we can tell one separate from another. Make sense? That's why we want to do that, so that way we can tell this is a problem with this particular one, and you can hunt it down. This lets you find what you're looking for right away, and then you don't go, oh, I think this error could be coming from one of the 62 different sites. I don't know which one. So put it by name, and then you don't have to worry about it, and then you know which one it is. You know, bam, we know they have a problem here. Maybe someone's trying to hack into their website, and we can see that in our error logs and whatnot. We can see the attack occurring, and we can inform them about it. We could even set up to where it's automated, so that way when we see a standard attacks happening, we can automatically have it generate an email and send it through our email server to them and let them know what's happening to that user. And then you don't even have to do anything. See, the more of this stuff you can script or automate and set up, that means the less work you have to do, which is the way you want it. So that right there is virtual hosting. Does that make sense to everybody? It's not that bad, really. You're just going to basically create the folders here for your document root. Right? I showed it earlier. You know, set the permissions and owners for it. This again could be the user instead. Now, note, instead of doing like I did here, I could have done instead, well, not that, sorry. That's not what I meant. I could have come in here instead for this other one here. And instead of putting the document root there, I could have had, and this is what a lot of web hosting companies do, could have been that right there. /home/Nestler server/HTML. And I could have created an HTML folder inside of the user Nestler server. Making sense? Instead of putting it over in the /var/www, whatever, I could put it in the person's user account for the document root. And then I have a different user for each one. This is what a lot of web companies will do. And they generate a new user for each account. Yes, a new user on the system. And then they can FTP into that user, right? Because that user's already set up for FTP. They can also SSH into that user and change permissions on things like that. So now you give them SSH access. Matter of fact, you can actually charge extra for that. A lot of web companies do. SSH access. They charge like an extra $5 for it. I'm not kidding you. You should go through and see some of the stuff. You're kidding me, right? No, they literally charge for each one of these little things. It's like 5 seconds of work, and then they charge an extra $5 a month for it. And they just get that bill to rack up each month there. Mm-hmm. Without creating a user, it's not going to come back. It's going to come back as an error. Right. Yeah, I need to create the actual user server. No. No, I mean you could create a folder like that, but it'd be stupid to do that. You know what I mean? No, you would have the script go in and automatically CD into that user and then generate that folder. You would do that with your own scripts and things of that nature. And you could do that. You could sit there and issue a command to change the username after you generate the user. Because think about it, you could do this from PHP and execute the commands. You could actually have it change users on the system without ever going into it. And then you could execute the creation of that folder and that thing. Or you could just stay root and just ch own it, chgrp, and then change the mob permissions on it and just run it as root. There you go. That would work too. Make sense? And you don't have to worry about it. This is simple too. Actually, it's probably simpler if you did the whole user system, because then you're already set for the FTP and their SSH. Yeah, you could just. This is what most web companies do. They do it into the user accounts. Some of them don't. Some of them do it the other way, like I was showing. But most of them do it into the actual user accounts, because then they just have a user account in the system. The permissions for that works automatically. Then when they create new folders in the system or whatever, it automatically becomes that user permissions type thing as they're that user. They only have access to the files within inside their home account and nothing else outside of that. And so since their actual web page is inside their home account, so their user account or whatnot, then they can't go anywhere else on the system. They can't go, hey, let's see what's on the system. They can't do that. If they do, they can't do anything about it. They don't have permission to do anything. Does that make sense? So it keeps them totally self-contained within inside that user account, inside of that user folder. You don't have to worry about them for anything else. Make sense? And when they FTP in, it'll be to their user account, which looks great because they just upload their web page right into their user home account, right into that folder. Making sense? So this is another way to go about it. I can't have two virtual hosts of the exact same entry like this, so I will be deleting this one. Escape. And just hitting DD several times. Alright. Makes sense though? I just want to point that out, show you what the entry looked like, make sure you understand. That's how you go about it. Okay. So with that, any other questions on virtual host, or does that make sense? Awesome. Alright. Colon. It's actually a hotkey thing for exiting. I never remember what it is. I've used it a few times for VIM. Do you know it? Yeah, without saving. Exit without saving. There is a hotkey for it. Yeah, Q exclamation mark, but that's not the hotkey. Quick exit. Yeah, it's like you hit a couple. Like for instance, saving and exiting would be Shift ZZ. There's one also for exiting without saving, but I can't remember what it is. But it's Shift ZZ to quickly exit and save. But I don't remember what it is for if you're for quickly exiting and not saving. There is one though for it. I did it once, and now I can't remember what it is. Well, it's useful. It's useful. All right, so that right there is how we do. And of course, you can script this whole thing up, creating one of these virtual hosts. It's very easy to do. You know what I mean? Just append it to the end of the file, right? Just echo the statements, appending them, each one to the end of the file, just like we did before on one of the other scripts. And bang, there you go. It's not bad at all. For instance, I could cat this file real quick. Oh, I could type it, but I'm just so lazy. All right, so I could come in here like this, right? Could select this whole thing. Control C, shift like that. Blah blah blah. Pop over here. Good old gedit. I don't even have to type the whole thing. How about that? And we can come into our LAMP server right here, and just like we were doing the whole good old echo here and creating that whole PHP thing, and we could tell it where we wanted to go. We could actually have this whole thing set up. This has to be for Red Hat because it's specific to Red Hat. But okay, so after this whole echo thing here, if we wanted to, we could echo over all these into there and append it. See, so we could do echo here in quotes. Let me just do this per line entry. Double one of these for append, right? If you do a single one, it's going to wipe out your entire configuration file. So you don't want to do that. That's why that matters, right? Slash etc slash httpd slash conf slash, and then we have what? We have the whole what is it? Yeah, I have a short-term memory. All right. Yeah, extremely short-term. All right. All right, httpd.conf, like that. Ta-da! And you just do that per entry. So I'm too lazy to type all that, so I'm not going to. Should realize this about me by now. Alright, so probably going, what is he doing? Oh, well, you see, you have to go back and do this one by one. I don't want to do that, so it's faster if I just do it for all of them and be lazy about it, and then come in here and just grab this first part of the echo with the quotes there, and then come back and hit it that way. Like that. I'm too lazy to do it otherwise. Oh, I forgot one. Ah, dang it. One got by me. See, this is what I was trying to avoid. I was trying to avoid him coming here and do that. Like that. And just tab it over the rest of the way. Tab, tab. But this would literally add a new entry onto the end of that file for the new virtual host. And ta-da. I did something wrong. Oh, yes, I see what I did wrong now. Missed one. Alright. And one last tab over. Quite literally like that. Of course, you have to use sed to go in there and change out the comments. We did that in another one. We did that in, what was it? Oh, was it DNS? Maybe not DNS. Maybe it was it NIS? It was one of those. Huh? It was Samba. Yeah, it's Samba. That's the one we did it in. So yeah, you could use it in like Samba or DNS, whichever one we did. I think it was. We actually did it in DNS also too, though. For actually editing the whole. Yeah, we did do it in DNS for the resolve file, resolve.conf. We out flat did. I know we did. If I come in here and look up the DNS one. Yep. See this right here? I could go in and grab my commented one and change it to uncommented. Or same thing, vice versa. This is the one we're finding and then change it to that. So I could go in and do this and change the ones where it's commented out and make it uncommented with the right setup. Yeah, for setting up the virtual hosting, we could do that with a sed to automatically go and edit the file without having to go in and edit the file. And then append on our virtual hosts. Make sense? Okay, cool. So that's how you can go about that and just do this whole sed process. If you don't remember how to do that, go back through the video. But that is how you can automate that. I'm just showing you how you can automate this stuff some more. So this is really cool because then you can just go ahead and launch this whole LAMP server. Goes through, sets up everything. You know what I mean? And then you'd have this as a separate script when you want to add a new virtual host each time from a web page. Let's look at how to do MySQL first. Okay. So now we're going to switch gears. We're going to go over how to use MySQL servers. We set one up. Well, we installed it anyways. It runs, but we never actually created a password for it, and we never actually did anything with it. It just sat there. I'm going to show you how to do something with it. I'm going to show you how to set it up, and then I'm going to show you how to access it through an actual web page with PHP, and how to do some crazy stuff without getting complicated. We're going to keep it very simple because you can actually go really deep with this, and I'm not trying to go deep with this at all. Okay. But MySQL is probably one of the most popular web databases out there, and not probably, it is the most popular web database out there, and you'll see it all the time. You're going to use it out in the field. It's going to happen. Guaranteed, period. That's all there is to it. You may run into Oracle too and DB2. Alright, so with that said, let's do, well, let me pull up my, I wrote up a basic one of ready to go MySQL statements. The whole nice set of examples and everything for you guys. Help you out. Put it in a folder I call web. Alright, and this is it right here. I have how to connect to the database system right here. So MySQL is the command. -h is the host, or aka the web address to it. In this case, it's localhost because it's on the same server as us, where we have our Apache server for our LAMP. Make sense, everybody? No, it doesn't. All right, hold up. We'll make it make sense. Right here, we enabled our MySQL database on this computer, and then we also started it. Right here, we installed the MySQL and then the MySQL server. Okay, so it's on this machine, quite literally. That's what LAMP. LAMP stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Okay, that's what LAMP stands for. So here's the MySQL part. And then here's the module to be installed so we can access the MySQL through PHP. Okay, so if you didn't remember, there it is. We did it. All right, so it's there. So how do we access it? Well, this is how we log into it. So in this case, it's localhost because we're talking about our computer here. This is quite standard. If this was off on a separate, now you can have this as a separate database server sitting off separate from your regular server, and that's perfectly fine. Actually, it's a good scenario. Actually, it's the best idea. If you do that, you would have to have its location where the DNS can point to it. The DNS server is pointing to that one. You use your DNS address to access it, and you put your DNS address here. Make sense? Excuse me. -u would be the user. In this case, it's root. Root would be your privileged one. You can actually go up and set, I'm not going to get into it today, but there's a way of actually setting permissions and stuff like that for certain users and have multiple users on the MySQL database. I'm not getting into that today, but you can do that. -p is the password. We're not going to input the password. We're going to hand input it when it prompts us for it. Okay, so that way it's not sitting around in a script. Make sense? And -b gets rid of the annoying beeps because it beeps every time you type a command in. So if you don't want to lose your head, type in -b so you don't have to listen to beeps all the time. Okay, very useful option, trust me. All right. First off, though, first thing we need to do before we do any of this other stuff is we need to set up the MySQL secure installation. By default, you don't even have a password and you can't do squat. By default, you have no password. So when you prompts you for the password, you put in no password. You just hit enter key because you don't have a password yet. We need to run this command. It's in the documentation, buried in there somewhere. This is the first thing you have to do, and it's not in the how-to manual. So, by the way, you need this. So we're going to copy this command here, and then we literally run it at terminal. I'm just going to step through this process. First off, I need to be root. If I'm going to do stuff here with the MySQL database server, unless I'm a particular user on the setup or whatever, which is cool. If you have the user set up, we don't have the user set up. If you're initially doing this stuff, you have to be root to do this, okay? All right. So I'm going to run this right here. Doesn't matter where you run it from? Nope. Doesn't matter where you run it from. So it's going to ask me for my root password. And I already put this in, and I call it password. But for you, where it says enter for none, that's when you're first setting this up, you will hit enter on the enter key because you do not have a password, right? You're going to have to create one. That's what we're doing here. And then it says, all right, awesome. Change the root password. We'll say yes. And then I say password in our case here. Now, this is not something you would actually use. Of course, you would never use the password on the real world scenario. Of course, it helps if you can type password correctly twice. Remove anonymous users. I'm not going to do that. But if you wanted to, you could do it. Disallow root login remotely. I'm going to say nope. Because if you're doing this through cloud remotely, do not disable that. Otherwise, you will not be able to actually do your own administration. Just FYI. Be aware, you just took away your ability to remote access your database and you cannot do your own administration. It also prevents hackers from breaking into and doing changes to it. So, but a lot of times anymore, we're not on site with the servers. If it's a really big company, we have tons and tons of computers like that, you may be on site all the time, in which case you don't have to worry about it, and you can turn off remote, and then it's more secure. But if that's not the case, make sure if you are having to do remote administration, make sure you have that set to yes where you can do remote administration. Okay, well, no, so that you can, whatever. By default, MySQL comes with a database name test. Remove test database and access to it. No, I don't. I want you guys to have that for an example. In a real scenario, yes, you would remove it. But for you guys, for an example, I want it there. Reload privilege tables now. Sure. All right, and then it's done. So this basically follows the prompts. It tells you what to do, basically. Alright, so now our MySQL database is up. Now we can log into it. So how we do that? Well, with the handy dandy command over here that we started out with at the top here. And that's this one right here. Note that's set for root. I'm just going to paste this in. I like putting all my commands right here in a text file like this because if you make a typo, there's no undo. I repeat, there's no undo for MySQL databases. So if you accidentally delete the table or the database, it's gone with all the information in it. There's no undo, there's no getting back, it's just gone. So be careful when you're doing database administration, because if you make a mistake and you lose, I don't know, 1 million customers purchasing information and the purchases occurred or whatever, you're probably fired. I'm just saying, okay? And all you have to do is make one typo mistake. So I like to type it into a text document where I can just copy and paste it correctly every time. So even when I'm doing development and things of that nature. So I'm going to type in password for my password. That's why you back up your database. FYI. You're probably going, oh my gosh, we'll back up your database. Still, it's a big deal if you deleted it. You're still probably fired. But before that, we need to create a database. How do we go about creating a database? We type in create database and then the name of the database. Probably a good idea to keep it all lowercase for the database name. Matter of fact, I think it's required. Like that. So I'm going to do test DB for test database. It doesn't have to be. Doesn't have to be uppercase for your command. It's by convention, it is uppercased, but it doesn't have to be. Okay. If I do that right there, I get an error. Why do I get an error? Oh, it already exists from before. Hold on, sorry. Let me delete. I forgot to remove this from before. There it is. It's gone now. Okay, now I can create it. Yay, I created the database. Alright, so the database is now created. I can actually look at my different databases. I can say show, and then say databases. And I can see all the different databases, including test. If I want to see what they set up for test as an example here, I can go look at it. Check it out. I can say use, not user, but use. Test, semicolon, and it changed the database. Now I can say show tables, and it has nothing in there. So that's pretty boring. If I say use test DB here, semicolon, it will change over to my test DB one. I'm going to create a new table for it. And the table I want to create is right here with the good old, I just left this in here so you can see how to do a PHP session table for doing, I'm not getting into that. Here's the table I want to create. I'm going to have a name and an email address with an auto incrementer, which is standard. You have an auto incrementer because you have to have a primary key. This is going to be your primary key for auto incrementer because it lets you do a fast lookup. Integers is what it's based on, and it looks up the fastest with an integer number. If you have to do a string character, it has to test it per character for the association. With the integer, it just checks one value, and bam, it's whether or not it's there. So it's way faster if you use an integer number. That's what the deal is. So here, I'm just going to go through here like this. Control C. And then I'll pop over here and paste that in. And it created it. So it created my auto incrementer and it created my varchar name here with 100 characters possible. Comma is important. Notice how these are separated by commas. You must have the commas. On the last one, you must not have a comma. If you do, it will not work. Okay? Closing with a parentheses and a semicolon. I do it blocked out like this because it's easier to read. Yes, you can put it all on one line, but that's really ugly and you're not going to be able to read it. So please format it like I did when you create the stuff. And this lets you create the table. In this case, it's test table. Now when I run show tables, oh, look there, we have test table now. But we have no data in there. We need to add some data. Alright, so let's add an entry into our database. Well, the handy command for this is called insert. It lets you insert entry into your database table. So insert into which table? Test table. What values do you want to input? Well, null, because it's the auto incrementer. It's going to automatically create the increment. It's going to add a new number. It does it for you. You don't even have to keep track of it. So you put null in every time, and it automatically does it for you. Okay. Comment, and then whatever data you want here. In this case, it's student for the name, and then for the email address, I'm telling it nothing at all. And closing parentheses, and I'm saying semicolon. Does this make sense? Yeah, the MySQL is actually quite easy to learn. The commands themselves are very simple. Databases aren't hard for as the language, as far as to follow. It's very simple as far as that goes. What gets complicated with databases is figuring out how to do all your proper relationships and how to lay out the database. That's the trick to databases. And we're not going over that. That's for your database class. There's a whole course for that. And that's not for me to go over. I just want to show you how this stuff works, okay? For doing it for real life. Alright, so here I go. And I'm going to insert that in. So bam, I now have that in a row. Now I can see what's in my database if I want. I use the select star from, and then I say what database table. So test table, and it shows me all the entries in that database table, which is all of one. See, now I told you auto increment, so I said null in here, and automatically said, hey, this is the first entry, so I'm going to make it 1. Next entry is going to automatically increment it to 2, and so on and so forth. Make sense? So that's why we set null to it. Here's that student for the name we passed in there, and since we passed in nothing to email, it has nothing in it.
And those headings how were those set up?
We did the headings here for auto ID, name, and email was created in our table when we created our table. So basically, back up in here, check it out. Here's our auto ID. Here's name, and here's email. Make sense? Alright, so what if I wanted to update my table instead? Alright, so I want to make a change to it, but I don't want to remove my entry that I've already done. I just want to make changes to it. Alright, so say someone needs to change their password and needs to store it into a database. Ta-da! Making sense? They need to change their location where they live. They moved. So on and so forth. Does this make sense? They need to change their email address. They need to change whatever. You know, they got a new email address they want to use. Okay, cool. Well, how do we do that? Well, we use the update command. We say update and we say the name of the table. And then we're going to set, in some field or some entry here, we're going to set the email to some value. In this case, it's going to be student at localhost. And close inside quotes here. Where name equals student. So everywhere there is the user student or the name student, it's going to automatically change the email to student at localhost. Is that making sense? So we're going to update our database table records with this handy dandy command here. Alright. Paste it in there. Let's do a good old show again. Select from test table. And check it out. Now it's different. Now it's actually updated. And we now have student at localhost. So we now have a new email address in there. Make sense? How this works? Cool. You can see why, as a network admin, you may need to know some of this stuff. You may need to update databases from time to time. You may need to change records. You may need to back them up. You may need to delete tables and clean up stuff. Say someone doesn't pay their account. You may need to wipe out their database table and their tables and their whatnot. This is how you do it. Literally, this is what you will be doing. Okay? Are you going to be doing any complicated database programming in the back end? No. Are you going to have to do some basic database stuff? Yes. It's standard. If you look at the job descriptions and entries, what they want you to know, whatever, this is on there. You will literally see this listed. You'll also see that you need to know PHP just a little bit, and it says a little bit too, for updating databases and automating tasks and things of that nature. Okay. We'll go into that in just a second. I'm showing you this because this is what they want for jobs. So there we go. And here's how you delete a table. You drop it. So you say drop table and then the name of the table, and that drops it. I don't want to delete my table right now, but this is how you do it. We'll delete it at the end for the heck of it. Does this make sense? Okay. And how to delete a database? Well, same thing. You say drop space database space the name of the database. So you're literally going to say like this. This in this case would be test DB like that. You just saw me do it a second ago at the very beginning, right? This is what I did. There it is. Is this making sense to everybody? Dropping it deletes it? Okay, good. So yeah, drop is their term for deleting a database. You can delete entries from a table. These are deleting records. If you want to delete a particular record, you know how we have insert, we also have delete. We can delete a record from our database also. So for instance, say I wanted to wipe this one out from my record. It's going to wipe out all of them, all my records in this table. Let me show you. Be careful with this. This is kind of dangerous. You can also delete particular ones, but this is how you delete all of them. There it is. Awesome. Not really. If I do this now, we have nothing. Empty set. Yeah, there's nothing in our table anymore. It's all gone. Making sense? Don't worry, we're going to add it back. We're going to do it with PHP in a second here. Yes. You delete records. You have to drop a database or a table. You have to drop a table. Drop it like it's hot for tables and databases. And then for database records entries, you're going to delete them. Any questions? All right, so those are the most standard commands you're going to work with. And there's some not dorky, but there's some complicated ones that you can do that I'm not going to touch with the 10-foot pole, like how you can compute radians and you can use the power of for mathematical operations and some crazy stuff that you will never use as a network admin. Yeah, like you can use the Havershine formula for calculating the curvature of the Earth's surface for figuring out geolocation with a database search. I'm not getting into that. There's a whole paper on that. It's about 55 pages long for how to do that. But it's really complicated. Yeah, exactly. It's complicated. But this is something you would never touch as a network admin. That's something us web programmers have to do. So you don't have to worry about it. But what's that? Yeah. It's mathematics. It's just mathematics. That's all. It's not a different language. Unless you learn math language, which is a different language, actually. But anyways, let's look at some web development stuff. All right, so I'm going to close these other ones because I don't need them anymore. I'm going to keep out my MySQL commands, because we'll keep using those. All right, so I created a whole separate folder, and these are all the web pages, and script them out, code them out. Now I did this like a cooking show, and I made all these ahead of time. Last night, I was up all night. Yay! Actually, I'd already coded these up, but I had to like simplify them for class, so I ended up recoding them all. Yay! Took hours. It's fun. Not really, not fun, but I did take hours. Yes. Okay. But it'll be easy for you guys because all you have to do is copy it. All right. So say I wanted to log into my database through my web page from a web browser. I can do that. I called it db_login.php. I could call it whatever I want. Of course, naming it appropriately makes it easier to understand what on earth it does. So that's what this one does. All right, so this logs in. So this says I create a variable called $db_host equals, and then here's going to be the name of the database. In this case, it's localhost, right? Or shall I say the host for it. Could have been www.example.com. Okay, could have been one of those, etc. In this case, it's localhost. Does this make sense to everybody? Whatever it happens to be online, whether the ICANN, DNS address is for it, that's what you put here. In this case, it's localhost. The database. This is testDB. We just created it. So we're going to access this particular database. You can have multiple databases inside of our MySQL server. All right, we saw that. We had several databases there, including test. It was one of several. So there we go. The user we're going to log in as. In the real world, you would not do this as root. You would do this as a different user with special permissions granted to that user. There's commands for doing that. I'm not getting into it. You would do that so that way someone could not access the root administrator account, which allows you to, as root, you can delete all the databases or access all the database tables, etc. You do not want to do that. Allow someone to do that or know how to do that with password stuff laying around. Only the network admin should know that. Make sense? So, not something you would leave in there. So you would change this user to something else. And then the password. Literally, it's going to be the password sitting there.
So through PHP, you have to actually put in the password.
Yes.
There as opposed to a prompt.
Right. But this is going to get hidden because it's going to be buried. So someone can't just see this. Thank God. So don't worry, they don't get access. They don't get the password to the database. Now, from there, we're going to connect to the database. We're going to use another PHP file that connects to the database. So here we do the PHP again, and then we're going to say include. We're going to include our login file to get us our login information. This is how we. Yep, that's the one we just went over. This is how we gained that information we just saved in there, right? We grab that, and then we're going to say connection equals MySQL connect. This is why you had to have that PHP MySQL. And then we're just going to use the DB host here, the DB username, and a DB password. And again, all that came from our DB login.php. All right, we created those variables inside of this one right here. See, DB database, DB username, DB host, DB password, etc. That's where that came from. And we don't have those laying about in here where someone can read it. Makes sense? So if it connects, if it does not connect, die, couldn't connect to the database. So basically we kick out an error message. Yeah, that's what we say. And it, oh, I'm sorry. Right. It's got the stupid colors. My mistake. Do I need to do that for all this? Makes sense. All right. So here we have if not $connection, right? Because here's your connection. So the result, whether or not connected, gets stored into the connection variable afterwards. Then we test to see, hey, did it connect? So if not connect, it means it's not true, which means it's false. If that's the case, then it's going to be true for it being not connected. Die, could not connect to database. We're kicking out an error message. We're telling it to kill it. BR for break, which means go to the next line. And MySQL underscore error, it's going to kick out the error message for MySQL. Make sense? All right. Down here, else, if it did connect, we're going to do something different. We're going to say db underscore select equals MySQL select underscore db here, open parentheses $db underscore database, close parentheses semicolon. So here we're going to select a particular database. We're going to use a particular database. In this case, it's going to be testdb. Make sense? So we're going to say we're going to access this database. Before we're saying the host, the username, and the password, we were logging into the MySQL server. Once we logged into the MySQL server, this is essentially the same thing as typing in use space testdb semicolon to use that database. This is this one right here. This right here is essentially, yeah, this is essentially the same thing. This command right here. Correct. This is yeah, from this one right here. This is that one. That's where your testdb came from. It's from that file. Correct. This is essentially the same thing as typing in use space testdb semicolon. So you use that database. It's essentially what we're doing here. Next one here, we're saying if not connected to the database, if we couldn't access the database because maybe it wasn't there type thing, maybe it's been deleted, maybe it's been dropped, then we're going to die and say couldn't select the database. MySQL error. We couldn't select the database because it didn't exist. It's dead. It's gone. It's deleted, etc.
MySQL underscore error is a command in there.
It's a built-in function that will automatically kick out the error. Yeah. And so therefore it's going to, do that. And we're done. That's it for that file. Make sense? So these are cool. Once you have this set up, you use this for all your other files. You don't have to retype it and use it. You just code this once and you use it forevermore type thing. And then you make slight modifications to your variables back there or whatnot. But you just basically reuse this over and over again. Make sense? So this is basically a whole framework. All right, so from here, we could even drop tables in here. We can add tables in here. We can create databases from inside the PHP. No kidding, we can do all that stuff from PHP. Everything we're doing at that command line, we can actually do in PHP, believe it or not. Here's how we can construct a, well, let's just do a query real quick. Here's how we can construct a query, just like we were typing it out earlier, like select star from blah, blah, blah table semicolon. This would list them all. That's what a quote unquote query is. So here I just include the DB connection. So guess what? DB connection includes the DB underscore login, so we don't have to worry about it. So we just include this one file, and it handles all of this automatically underneath the hood, and we don't touch it again forevermore. Make sense? So it's awesome. Once you have this set up, once you code this once, you'll never have to code it again. You just use it again. And then the only thing you ever change is these values here. Yeah, that's it. Exactly. So this really is quite cool. Alright, so here I'm just saying, normally you grab this from a web page, but let's pretend like they passed this in from a form. I'm not going to get into how to do a form. We're keeping this simple. Right here, name equals student, for instance. Alright, I'm going to select, I create a variable called select. I don't have to do this, but I do this to make it easier for composing these whole select. So that way I can change it easier if I want to change this per file. Because if I want to do a different type of insert, I can just copy and paste this whole file and then make a few changes and I'm done type thing. So I'm just trying to keep it simple and reusable. So I use the select for the select command column. For what I'm trying to select, star means everything. So I'm selecting all the records from the from table. And then what table we're selecting here. And in this case, it's test table. So if I were to reuse this, I copy and paste it. I just change test table and I leave the rest alone. Or maybe I change the star to where I'm selecting for particular setup or whatever. And I change that one thing. That's it. Does that make sense? Then I don't have to change the rest of this. And it just makes it fast and easy. Then when I compose my query, it's real quick and easy. I just append them all together. So again, I don't have to change this entry at all either. I just took it out the where because I could do it base where, select where, something's equal to something, blah, blah, blah. And it has a more detailed search criteria. But anyways.
Like if you wanted to, everywhere where somebody's email address was, where name,
yeah.
Where equals name.
Correct.
For somebody's email address in a file, in a database, everywhere that exists.
Yeah, where name equals $ name. Yeah, literally. With the where command. Quite literally, yes, that's how you go about it. I'm sorry, wrong thing. If only I could click right. Okay. I think I might have my commands over here. Did I do a more complicated select? Yeah, right here. Select from where name equals student, for instance. Make sense? So this will only list the ones with student in it. So if we had Joe or Sam or whatever, it's not going to list Joe or Sam. It's only going to list the ones with student for the name, for the records. Does that make sense to everybody? So that's where you have the where one. Using the word too much. Alright, so from here, you could compose it though if you wanted to in there. Alright, so here I just append these together by putting dots in between them for the variables, and it just kind of like staples them together. It just glues them all together as one statement. And then I can just pass this whole query variable. I'm echoing it out so I can see it right here. And then I'm telling it to break and do a whole page, so I drop down to the next line so it's not all on the same line. And then I'm getting the result. So I'm actually saying MySQL query. So I'm actually sending what the command is contained inside this query variable to the MySQL server. And then the result I get back is stored in the result variable that I get back from the database. So if not result die, I could not query the database. Error. Otherwise, I'm going to have it loop through each entry here with a while loop. MySQL fetch row, so I grab each row from what's returned, and I loop through each one, and I'm displaying each field of the record. In this case, we have 3 fields because we have our ID, we have our name, and we have our email. So that's 3 fields. So that's why I went 0, 1, and 2 for this array right here. Sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. So we have our while loop here. This is grabbing each row with the MySQL fetch row here from the result. Just grabbing it row by row, or record by record, if you will, for what's returned. And this becomes an array for a location result here, and then each element of the array is a different field in that record. So this has 3 fields in it for this record, which is the ID, the auto ID. It has the name, and it has the email. So that's the 3 records. Sorry, 3 fields in the record. All right, and so I'm accessing that, and so I'm displaying that, and so I'll show you exactly what that does. So when I save this out and run this, quite literally, right here, let's rerun this. Select from table, and apparently I haven't added anything in. Did I delete? Oh, I did. Okay, that's right. I deleted the user. That's right. So I have nothing in there, and that's what it's showing me. But here's the command that was generated. If I wanted to, I could insert a user by doing this right here, and run that one, and it'll insert a new record. I'll go over that in just a second, and check it out. Here's my auto ID for the first field. Here's the name, which is the second field. And then here's the email address, which is the third field in my array. And this was the first record row. Make sense, everybody? Yeah. So again, I'll point that out where that is in the code. This is the first field here, which was the 2. This was the student one, which is the second field for that record. And then this third one was the third field here was the email address on the page.
On that bottom line there, you've got
Boom, boom, boom.
out, you could telling you how many times it shows up.
Yeah, we can actually count how many iterations in the loop, how many records we got back by doing this count here. We could use it for other things too, but I'm not going to get into that. Yeah, you would. You'd echo out $count. It would display it. Just like we have the echo command inside of Shell, they also have an echo command for PHP, and it displays something on the page. Is what it does. Make sense? Use echo a lot for PHP. It's how you basically kick out HTML and have it generate HTML pages on the fly based on whatever database data you can get. This is how we use it for web development. We'll grab information from the database and then generate an HTML page based on the data we get from the database on the fly, and bam, it magically appears, depending on what someone selects or does. So they're not like pre-written HTML pages, rather they're generated ones. Here's the insert one. So it's just like before. We have our DB connection again. Here we have our email address and our name. And we're just saying update here equals insert to tables, test table, from values, open parentheses, null, comma, close quote, semicolon, set values equals. Here we have quotes around this, $name, dot. Here we have to have quotes around this, so I'm putting this whole thing in quotes, comma, quote, close, single quotes. Single quotes are quotes that we're using for PHP. It can either be used with single quotes or double quotes. We need the double quotes for the MySQL, and we need the single quotes for the PHP, so I'm using that combination. Typically you're going to use single quotes because a lot of things use double quotes, so use single quotes inside of PHP. You don't have to worry about there being a conflict. It'll work with both just fine. Here the dot to append it again, and here's the email address for setting the values. Close, single quote, semicolon. $query equals update.tables.from.setValues. So it composes this whole long statement here, which is pretty close to the same thing as this MySQL command over here where we have our insert. Notice how close that is. Only thing different is the email address is going to be in there. Make sense? So essentially what we're doing, if we want to see this, now I echo this out. Let me point this out real quick. I echo out the statement here. After I'm done composing this query, I echo it out so I can see what I've done. So I can see my query, so I make sure I don't have any mistakes. This is really important when you're composing one of these. Alright, if I go here to insert, check it out. Insert into test table values, open parentheses, null, check it out, comma, in quotes, student, close quotes, comma, open quotes, student at localhost, close quotes, close parentheses. If you don't have these quotes, you have an error. It doesn't have to have a semicolon on it because we're doing it through PHP. So this is a valid command. All right. When you do it through PHP, you don't need a semicolon for whatever reason. I don't know why that is, but that is the case. $result equals MySQL underscore queries, same as before. It's identical. $queries, what we're passing in. We get back a result. Hey, if it didn't go right, it died. We said, hey, it wasn't able to do the insert into the database. Probably because the database table is not there. Make sense? That's how you do insert. And I just did it a second ago, and when I queried it, we got back results that added that user. Now, we've seen query, we've seen insert. There's only one left besides that, and that's update. Here's our update one. Include db underscore connection.php. See that? Here's our email. Here's our students. Same thing. Copy and pasta. Update equals update. Test table for tables. From set here. Set values. Email equals, and there's our email. Where name equals the name. Query $query equals $update tables blah blah blah. Composes the whole thing, puts it all together, and we echo out that whole query string. Then we send the query to MySQL, and we get back the result. And hey, if it's an error, it displays an error. Make sense? All right, let's see what happens when we run this. Now, if I run this update one here, this is what's going to happen. It's going to update it from student at localhost to student at localhost.localdomain for the email address. So we're going to change the email address. So if I say, all right, let me show you this real quick. All right, see? We're changing the email address. This is what the email address currently says. Just to make this hit home, okay? And then if I come over here to my update and I run this, bam, it did it. No error messages, blah, blah, blah. If I query it again with this query script by refreshing the page, pop, there it is. It updated it in the database. Making sense? So this is very cool. I can come back over here to this insert and refresh to add a new one. If I come back over here to my query, we now have 2 records in the database, and it's displaying both of them. Yeah, because it's not set to unique. We set the field to unique. I wouldn't be able to do that, but since the field's not set to unique, I can have duplicate names. It's something for the web programmer to worry about. You don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. Is this making sense? So that's an example of how to do that and how to actually manipulate a database from a web page. So you can basically do your database administration remotely without ever actually being there on site, either through a terminal command through SSH or through a web page. And this is how you can automate it with a web page. Otherwise, you have to type it in over and over again, right? So if you don't want to type stuff in over and over again, you can use web page PHP to automate it. That's why they ask you to know it for the jobs. Make sense? This matters for Windows and Linux and Mac OS X. This is how you do Apache web servers, period. Which makes up 85% of the web servers. So, kind of matters. Alright. So, besides that, one last thing I can show you on here. So, just write up all these scripts, make it work. We have one thing right here. Here's how I execute commands, shell commands, or DOS commands, or whatever I want, from PHP. And this will literally execute a command. I've used this to do lots of things like video conversion. I've converted videos using this shell commands, passed to a video conversion program and pass it in. Now remember, we went over how to actually write our scripts where we can pass in values, like for instance the LAMP server, right? The LAMP server, we went over how to code up a LAMP server to actually receive input. We did that up here at the top. $1. What we grab from the prompt. Well, this is ideal. Here we go. This is why you had to learn that. This is why we went over this stuff. With this, we can test to see if we have more than just the actual command. If we do, great. Then we can, grab the $1 and start grabbing the extra options. Well, cool. Well, if you have your script set up with their different options, you can pass it in from the PHP here using variables. Is this making sense? Oh, I'm sorry. You can't read it. So what could I do? Well, I could come in here, for instance, and do the good old $sign thing. $sign, I don't know, folder address, I don't know, equals, and then just to show you how this could work with variables. So you could have something like this where it's generated from a web page like this inside, and then I'm not typing that, like that. And then now it's going to insert whatever is stored in that variable. So you could have this be interactive. You could have it, oh, sorry. Oh wait, I got off on something. Hold on 1 second. A mistake. Alright. So here I have a command. I'm appending this to it, etc. from an execc, and this is executing the statement. And it's going to make it happen. And then this will actually do this in the terminal. It's very cool. Very powerful indeed. Huh? Yeah, you can. Yeah. Yeah. It could be a .sh instead. Yeah, and then you could pass parameters to it. Maybe you need to set up this user. Like for instance, we're talking about doing the virtual host, right? Maybe we need to put in that person's web address in there for the web address. And then as part of the document root too. And we need to create the user account based on their web address also. Right? So if we have those values in there, we can run these different scripts, passing in the variables, storing those values from the PHP, and generate all those accounts. And now you don't have to go in and do it yourself. Yeah, but in this case, when the person's filling out the web page, it's actually doing it for you, and you never have to do it at all. Right. It's automatically adding the entries to the database and to the actual server, and restarting the server, and adding the virtual host entries and setting it all up, and you don't do anything at all. It's all automated.
Just like when you sign up for a hosting board.
Yeah.
You select your name and it goes out there and tells you it's available or not.
Right.
And then you select your password. It's this kind of thing.
Yep.
Where it's taking all that information, reading it in, going to the database,
yep,
and applying it, and then spitting it back out.
Correct. So it's correct. Yeah, it's just like when you sign up on Facebook or something like that. You're creating an account, you're putting in your username, your password, and all that. All that gets stored into the database. It automatically creates the database entries, and there automatically does the insert statements. Literally, that's what it does. And there, you want to go back and change something about you. Maybe you want to change your email address or whatever. It's doing an update record, update for your record in the database. You're stored in that database. That's literally what's going on. Yeah, that's what Facebook uses as a database system. It is a LAMP server for Facebook. No kidding. That is what it is. And all the data is stored into a database system, and they are getting the data from the database, and those are generated pages on the fly. Is this making sense? All right. So basically, you now know how to execute your own custom scripts from inside of PHP, from inside of a web page, and actually have it do it. This is how you do it. This is how you can actually set up your servers with scripts. This is how you do all this stuff. and this is LAMP, and this is the job out there for doing network admin for web administrator. It's essentially what you do. This and email servers and FTP servers and SSH servers. That's pretty much it. Of course, you can go into more depth with LAMP than this, but not a whole lot more, but somewhat more. Yeah, like mod, SSL, and some other stuff too. I'm not getting into, but yeah, this is how you do it. Any questions on any of this? Okay, cool. Then I guess we're done.